Your rights when a debt collector contacts you. Few experiences create as much anxiety as being contacted by a debt collector. A phone call, a letter, or even a voicemail can immediately raise questions. Is this legitimate? Is this serious? What happens if I ignore it? What am I required to do? Many people assume that debt collectors have broad powers or that a single missed response can cause major consequences. In reality, debt collection in the United States follows a structured system governed by federal rules. While debt collectors are allowed to contact consumers to request payment, their authority is limited, and consumers have specific rights throughout the process. This video explains how debt collection typically works, what debt collectors are allowed to do, what they are not allowed to do, and how the system generally unfolds over time. What a debt collector actually is. A debt collector is a person or company that attempts to collect a debt that is owed by a consumer. In many cases, debt collectors are third-party agencies hired by creditors to collect unpaid balances. In other cases, a company may purchase debt from the original creditor and then attempt to collect it themselves. Not every company that contacts you about a debt is considered a debt collector under federal rules. Some original creditors collect their own debts using internal departments. Others outsource collection efforts after a period of non-payment. The distinction matters because third-party debt collectors are subject to specific federal restrictions. Regardless of who contacts you, the collection process generally follows predictable steps, and consumers are not required to respond immediately or without understanding what is happening. Why debt collectors contact people? Debt collectors typically contact people for one simple reason. According to their records, a debt remains unpaid. This does not automatically mean the debt is valid, accurate, or legally enforceable. It simply means the account has reached a stage where collection activity has begun. Common reasons people are contacted include missed payments, billing disputes that were never resolved, outdated contact information, or debts that were transferred from one company to another. In some cases, people are contacted in error because of incorrect records or identity mix-ups. Being contacted does not automatically mean wrongdoing, nor does it mean immediate consequences will follow. How debt collection usually begins. The first contact from a debt collector is often a letter, phone call, or voicemail. This initial contact is typically informational in nature. It may state that the collector is attempting to collect a debt and that any information obtained will be used for that purpose. This first contact is not a lawsuit, a court order, or a judgment. It is simply the start of communication. Many people panic at this stage because the language used can sound formal or serious, even though no enforcement action has occurred. Understanding this distinction helps reduce unnecessary stress and prevents rush decisions. What information a debt collector must provide. Debt collectors are generally required to provide basic information about the debt they are attempting to collect. This includes the amount owed, the name of the creditor, and information about how to dispute the debt if the consumer believes it is incorrect. This information is often provided in writing shortly after the first contact. Consumers are allowed to review this information and question it. There is no requirement to immediately accept the debt as valid. If the information provided is unclear or incomplete, the consumer may request clarification. The collection process does not stop simply because a question is asked, but it does slow and become more structured. What debt collectors are allowed to do. Debt collectors are allowed to contact consumers to request payment. They may do so by phone, mail, email, or text, depending on the circumstances. They may explain the debt, discuss payment options, and request confirmation of information. Collectors may also report unpaid debts to credit reporting agencies, subject to applicable rules and timelines. They may pursue collection efforts over time if the debt remains unresolved. These actions are allowed within specific limits. The existence of these limits is critical because many people assume collectors have unlimited authority, which is not true. What debt collectors are not allowed to do. There are clear restrictions on debt collector behavior. Collectors are not allowed to harass, threaten, or deceive consumers. They cannot threaten arrest, criminal charges, or legal action that they do not intend or are not legally permitted to pursue. They cannot use obscene language, make repeated calls intended to annoy, or misrepresent the amount or status of the debt. They cannot falsely claim to be attorneys or government officials. These restrictions exist to prevent abuse and intimidation. While violations can occur, they are not part of the lawful process. Phone calls. What is allowed and what is not? Debt collectors may contact consumers by phone, but there are limits on how and when calls can be made. Calls are generally restricted to reasonable hours, and collectors may not repeatedly call with the intent to harass. Consumers are not required to answer phone calls. Ignoring a call does not create new obligations, though the collector may attempt contact again later. If communication becomes excessive or confusing, consumers often benefit from understanding that phone contact is only one method of communication, not a requirement. Letters and written communication. Written communication is a common method used by debt collectors. Letters often include information about the debt, instructions for payment, and information about consumer rights. Unlike phone calls, letters provide a written record. Many people prefer written communication because it allows time to read and understand the information without pressure. Receiving a letter does not mean immediate action is required, but it does signal that the collection process is active. Emails and text messages. In recent years, debt collectors have increasingly used email and text messages to contact consumers. These methods are subject to similar rules as other forms of communication. Consumers are not required to engage through digital messages, and collectors must still identify themselves and the purpose of the contact. Messages that appear misleading or threatening are not permitted. Digital communication can be convenient, but it can also be confusing. Understanding that these messages are part of the same regulated process helps reduce uncertainty. Contact at work. What the rules look like. One of the most concerning situations for many people is being contacted at work. Debt collectors may be allowed to contact a consumer at their workplace under limited circumstances, but there are restrictions. Collectors generally cannot continue contacting someone at work if they are told that such contact is not permitted. They also cannot disclose the existence of a debt to coworkers or supervisors. Workplace contact is an area where misunderstandings are common, so knowing that limits exist is important. Contacting family members or other people. Debt collectors may sometimes contact other people in an attempt to locate a consumer. These contacts are limited in scope. Collectors may ask for location information, but generally cannot discuss the debt itself. They are not allowed to repeatedly contact third parties or disclose details about the debt. These rules exist to protect privacy and prevent embarrassment. Being contacted through someone else does not change the consumer's rights or obligations. Credit reporting and debt collection. One concern many people have is how debt collection affects credit reports. Collection accounts may be reported to credit reporting agencies, but this does not happen instantly. Reporting timelines vary depending on the type of debt and the circumstances. Once reported, collection accounts can affect credit scores, but the impact depends on several factors. Importantly, contact from a debt collector does not automatically mean a debt has already been reported to credit agencies. What a debt collector call does not mean. It is important to clarify what a debt collector contacting you does not mean. It does not mean a lawsuit has been filed. It does not mean wages will be garnished. It does not mean assets will be seized. Those outcomes, when they occur at all, typically involve additional steps and legal processes. A collection call is simply communication, not enforcement. Understanding this distinction prevents unnecessary fear and rushed decisions. Common myths about debt collectors. There are many myths surrounding debt collection. Some people believe collectors can arrest them. Others believe ignoring all contact makes debts disappear. Neither belief reflects how the system actually works. Another common myth is that collectors can demand payment in any form or time frame they choose. In reality, payment arrangements are often negotiable, and consumers are not required to agree immediately. Dispelling these myths helps people approach the situation calmly and thoughtfully. Common mistakes people make when contacted. One common mistake is responding emotionally or without understanding the situation. Panic can lead to rushed agreements or sharing information unnecessarily. Another mistake is assuming every contact is legitimate without reviewing details. Errors and misunderstandings do occur. Some people also avoid all communication indefinitely, which can complicate matters over time. Understanding the system helps avoid these extremes. What this video is not saying, this video does not suggest that debts should be ignored or that collectors should be confronted. It does not provide legal strategies or personal recommendations. The goal is to explain how the system usually functions, so viewers understand what is happening and what assumptions are incorrect. A calm way to think about debt collection. Debt collection is a process, not an emergency. It unfolds over time and follows rules. Understanding those rules reduces fear and increases clarity. Most collection situations involve communication, not immediate consequences. Knowing that helps people think clearly and make informed decisions. Long-term outcomes and context. Some debts are resolved through payment, others are disputed or corrected. Some remain unresolved for extended periods. Outcomes vary widely depending on circumstances. What remains consistent is that the system is structured, regulated, and slower than many people assume. Key takeaways. Debt collectors are allowed to contact consumers, but their authority is limited. They must follow rules regarding communication, accuracy, and behavior. Being contacted does not mean legal action is imminent. It does not mean criminal consequences. It means communication has begun. Understanding the system helps reduce stress and prevents misunderstandings. Final words. American Rights Guide exists to explain everyday systems in plain English without fear, politics, or hype. If you found this explanation helpful, consider subscribing for more calm, educational breakdowns of how common systems work in the United States.